Most men make a critical mistake when they realize they're not her first choice. They panic. They think the way to rise in her eyes is by doing more, proving more, giving more. But that's not how human nature works. If you weren't her first choice, it's not because you weren't available, it's because deep down you were too available. You tried too hard, you gave too much. And in doing so, you confirmed her internal belief that she didn't have to value you, because you didn't even value yourself enough to make her earn your presence. The problem isn't her perception of you, the problem is your perception of yourself. When you start from the mindset of I'm not her first choice, everything you do becomes a performance to change her mind. And people can feel that energy. It's anxious, ungrounded, needy. That's not attractive. What's attractive is someone who knows exactly who they are and doesn't need to fight for someone's attention to feel significant. You don't earn respect by chasing. It's built by standing still and letting people come to you, because your life is already so full, so disciplined, and so clearly moving forward with or without them. When a man stops trying to compete, something fascinating happens. His energy shifts. He's no longer acting from scarcity. He's no longer obsessed with how she's reacting or who else she might be interested in. He realizes that true competition is internal. It's not about beating the other guy. It's about becoming the version of yourself that you respect. That's when you elevate. That's when you stop being one of her options and become the standard by which she compares every other option. And this isn't about arrogance or pretending to be better than others. It's about investing your energy into things that grow you, into your work, your purpose, your fitness, your mental clarity. Because once you build a life that's meaningful without her, you naturally start attracting the kind of energy that makes people take notice. You're no longer trying to fit into her world, you've created your own. And that, psychologically, is magnetic. She may not have chosen you first, that's fine, but now you're not even asking to be chosen. You're letting her feel the gap between who you were and who you've become. And that shift is more powerful than any words you could ever say, any text you could ever send, or any grand gesture you could ever attempt. There is no need to fight for your place in someone's life when you're already fighting every day to build your own. One of the most powerful shifts you can make when you're not her first choice is to stop reacting emotionally to her behavior. The moment you pull your emotions out of the equation and start responding from clarity instead of impulse, everything changes. You begin to realize that her attention or lack of it doesn't define your worth. That's where most men lose themselves. They take rejection personally. They internalize it. They think, what did I do wrong? How can I change to be what she wants? But that's a trap, because the more you shape yourself to fit someone else's preferences, the more you abandon your authenticity. And people can feel that. They may not be able to articulate it, but they'll sense the desperation, the subtle energy of someone trying to be enough. What you need to understand is that respect is not given to those who seek validation. It's given to those who don't flinch in the face of indifference. If she's distant, if she seems uninterested, let that be. Let her have her distance. The more you chase, the more you confirm her belief that she's the one who sets the emotional tone. And if she's setting the tone by being hot and cold, pulling away, or showing you that you're not her priority, the best response isn't to fight for her attention. It's to show her calmly and confidently that her behavior doesn't affect your peace. When a man stops reacting, when he stops arguing, questioning, or seeking reassurance, it shifts the dynamic entirely. She starts to wonder why he's not affected, why he's so grounded. That curiosity begins to grow into a deeper kind of intrigue, because emotional stability in a man is rare. And when you demonstrate it, especially when things feel uncertain, you separate yourself from every other man who crumbles the moment she pulls away. What she doesn't expect is your calm. She expects the text, she expects the call, she expects the emotional confrontation. But when none of that comes, when you carry on focused, composed, unaffected, that silence becomes louder than any words you could say. It makes her rethink the value she placed on you. It makes her question if she misjudged you. And more than that, it makes her realize you're not dependent on her validation to feel powerful. The more you hold your ground without needing to explain yourself, the more attractive you become. Not because you're playing games, but because you've outgrown the need to chase someone who's unsure about you. If you're not her first choice, one of the most effective ways to shift that dynamic is to start investing in yourself completely, unapologetically, and without making her your emotional center. You have to reclaim your energy from her. Take back the parts of yourself that you've handed over in exchange for her attention, her approval, her validation. Because the truth is, when a woman senses that your entire identity revolves around how she feels about you, she'll never fully respect you. She might tolerate your presence. She might even enjoy the attention, but she won't see you as a man she truly desires, not until you stop orbiting around her. The moment you refocus on yourself, on your physical health, your mental clarity, your financial path, your spiritual balance, you begin to radiate a completely different kind of energy. You're no longer chasing, you're building. And building is magnetic. When you're deeply invested in your own evolution, you stop needing someone else to make you feel worthy. That shift in energy is not subtle. It changes how you carry yourself, how you speak, how you walk into a room. You become less reactive, more discerning. And that calm confidence, earned through discipline, not words, starts to attract attention without effort. This isn't about pretending not to care. It's about actually not placing your self-worth in the hands of someone else's indecision. A woman can sense when a man has options, not because he flaunts them, but because he doesn't cling. He moves from abundance, not desperation. When you're so locked in on your purpose that her lack of clarity doesn't shake your direction, she starts to feel something she may not have expected, uncertainty. She begins to question if maybe she misread your value. And that's where the power starts to shift. You don't need to prove anything to her. Let your growth speak for itself. When she sees the discipline in your habits, the calm in your demeanor, the consistency in your pursuit of something greater than her attention, she starts to reevaluate everything. She remembers your presence, not as the man who waited on her, but as the one who became too focused, too grounded, too evolved to chase anyone. Because the man who builds himself becomes the man no one forgets. Another critical shift you need to make is learning to challenge her emotionally. Not by playing games or trying to manipulate her, but by introducing depth, tension, and unpredictability into your presence. If you're always easy to read, always available, always agreeable, you become emotionally predictable. And emotional predictability, while it might feel safe, doesn't inspire passion. It doesn't stir something primal within her. When a woman knows exactly how you'll respond to everything, she places you in a category that's hard to break out of. The category of a man who doesn't ignite anything in her. But when you're able to remain grounded in your values and still occasionally disrupt her assumptions about you, you create an emotional experience she can't easily dismiss. That's what makes her start thinking about you when you're not around. That's when you stop being just another man chasing her and become the man who challenges her worldview. She starts wondering what you're thinking. She becomes curious about what you're doing, not because you're trying to be mysterious, but because you have your own mind, you have boundaries, you aren't afraid to disagree when it matters, and you're not afraid to walk away when your standards aren't met. Emotional challenge isn't about creating conflict, it's about standing firm without hostility. It's about being a man who doesn't fold just to keep her close. When she says something manipulative or inconsistent, you don't react emotionally. You respond with clarity. You don't beg for her presence or try to convince her of your worth. You show her that your time, your presence, your peace is not something she gets just because she's attractive or affectionate in moments of weakness. This creates contrast. She might be used to men who chase her blindly, who cater to her moods, who lose themselves trying to win her over, but now she's dealing with someone who can see through all of it and still remain composed. That level of emotional discipline makes her feel exposed, not in a cruel way, but in a revealing one. And when a woman feels that someone sees her clearly, but isn't desperate for her, it drives her into deeper reflection. You change the dynamic by becoming the one who adds depth, the one who's capable of intensity, but also restraint, the one who doesn't react, but responds. And when she experiences that kind of presence, it becomes something she can't easily walk away from or replace. There's something that quietly reshapes the way she sees you. And that's when you start investing in yourself more than you invest in her. Not as a tactic, but as a principle. When a woman starts sensing that you've turned your attention inward, that your focus is now on becoming better mentally, physically, emotionally, something in her starts to shift because you've stopped trying to prove your worth to her. You've stopped chasing validation. You've redirected that energy toward your own growth, your own peace, your own progress. And this doesn't go unnoticed. In fact, it does the opposite of what you might expect. It stirs her curiosity. It disturbs the narrative she had in her mind, the one where you are just another guy orbiting around her, prioritizing her moods and waiting for her attention. Now she sees you waking up with purpose. She hears about the goals you're chasing. She notices that you're not so quick to reply, not because you're busy, focused, driven, and that's the moment she starts questioning her place in your life instead of the other way around. Women are far more attuned to emotional shifts than most men realize. They can feel it when your energy changes, when the gravitational pull between you and them no longer centers around their approval. And that change doesn't make them indifferent. On the contrary, it makes them anxious, intrigued, and introspective. Because now, instead of leading the dance, she's watching you move to your own rhythm. And she wants to know if she's still part of that rhythm. See, growth is magnetic. Discipline is attractive, not because of what it offers her directly, but because of what it signals. Self-respect, direction, independence. These are rare qualities, and when she sees them in you, especially after taking you for granted, she feels something deeper than regret. She feels compelled. Compelled to rethink, to recalibrate, to reconsider everything she assumed about your dynamic, because she thought she had you figured out. She didn't expect you to evolve. When you commit to your own development, not only do you heal from the past, but you start creating a future where you're no longer the one seeking permission to matter. And that shift has a ripple effect. She begins to wonder if she was ever truly enough for the man you're becoming now, not out of insecurity, but because she can feel you slipping out of her emotional control. That's the quiet power of transformation. You don't have to argue. You don't have to explain. You just grow and let your absence, your silence, and your evolution do all the talking. When you stop trying to convince her of your value, something powerful begins to unfold, not just within her, but within you. The very act of no longer explaining yourself, no longer justifying your intentions, your worth, or your presence, signals a level of inner certainty that most people don't expect. And for her, it's disorienting at first. She's used to being in a position where you chase, where you seek her approval, where you try to mend things even when you're not the one who broke them. But when you withdraw from that role, when you stop participating in that dynamic, it forces a moment of reflection on her end that cuts deeper than any argument ever could. Because silence speaks. It speaks of self-respect. It speaks of boundaries. It speaks of a man who understands that if someone truly values you, you shouldn't have to convince them. It speaks of someone who stepped out of the game, not out of weakness, but out of clarity. And that kind of clarity unsettles those who are accustomed to your pursuit. When you let go of trying to prove yourself, you shift the entire emotional balance. Suddenly, she's left with her own thoughts, her own regrets, and her own unanswered questions. And that's exactly where the change begins. You see, people often don't realize what they had until there's no longer a constant reminder of it. When you were trying to show her who you were, your loyalty, your intentions, your potential, she could take that for granted. Not out of malice, but because humans tend to undervalue